Hello, DE Psychology. Um, Once again, uh, back into week 9, couple of announcements. As I told you, playing music, that's very nostalgic to me. Decided to play a little Rise Against today, a song called Swing Life Away. If you have a chance to listen to it, um, it is a perfect song for graduation time, and it's one of my favorites. Um, it was actually my kiddos' graduation classes graduating song. But anyway, so get a little nostalgic there. Well, we're back in week 9, and I'm going to lower Rise Against here, and we'll come back to it. But we're back in week 9, and just a reminder of a couple of things. The first thing is that you do have your letters to self if you can get those to me. I did find out that next week, Monday through Friday, the school will be open. And what I mean by that is you can drop off your letters Monday through Friday from 9 until 2. But there will be somebody there. The tables will be there, and I can pick up the letters then. So those are your letters to yourself. Your final project, I do have plenty of people that have signed up, but I still have some that have not picked your movie. You want to get to do that as soon as possible. Movies are getting taken up. There are some that are already not available. And really just working on that final project in some free time of yours, watching that movie and then writing that short little paper. All right, so let's go into, and don't forget, our readers' notebooks are due this Sunday at 11:59 p.m. It's a total of 8 questions, 4 per chapter, open-ended there, okay? So take a look at that unit organizer, and that makes more sense. I've gone over that before. All right, quarantine week 9, Wednesday's stuff. So today we're going to finish out personality, really. We're going to talk about our final. Let me go into here really quickly. We're going to talk about our final personality school of thought. There we go. Wow. I was watching this thing load really slowly. And so we're going to talk about our final personality school of thought. We've gone through all of the personality theorists in terms of the schools of thought, every single theorist. That would be difficult to do. Like I've said before, if this has been something that's engaging to you, you would take in college a 200 level class on personality. So we've gone through the psychoanalytics. We did the trait theorists. We did the humanists on Monday. And now today we're going to look at the social cognitive school of thought, the importance of beliefs about the self. So I save this one usually for last, simply because this is the school of thought that I work mostly from in my sports psychology or performance psychology. And so I saved this one for last because it is the one that I can speak on to the most. A reminder to do your participation for this week. But let's go right in here. This is the note sheet that I'm going to pull up for you guys. You can copy the note sheet in terms of placing it in a folder, actually making a hard copy, however you want to do that. Again, this is not necessarily something that you're tested on because we don't have any more tests, but your final, you actually may be able to use some of this stuff within your final. So I'm pulling up the sheet, and you can see it has my highlights of what to emphasize during class. But the social cognitive perspective is a perspective that derives its basic psychological principles from 3 of the school of thoughts. The learning school of thought, which was all about the conditioning, like classical conditioning, operant conditioning. And then cognition, which is about like how your memory works, how your mind works. And then social behavior, which we haven't talked a lot about. And this was always represented by our ring finger, where we wear a ring. I don't think I've worn my ring since we've gone on quarantine, but this is the social school of thought. So the idea here is that we take into account our external environment and the events that happen to us. And we think about those, we learn how to react to those, either by conditioning or modeling, and we process what's happening, and then we make a reaction to that, and that forms our personality. When we think about our own thinking, which you guys have been doing a lot of in this quarantine, for my class at least, I know you've been probably doing a lot of it just on your own, not as an assignment. We call that metacognition. When you're thinking about your own thinking, when you're reflecting, basically, reflection is metacognition. Okay. So when you reflect about how you think about things, that's metacognition. And the social cognitive school of thought uses a lot of metacognition within their practice, within their therapies, and within their practice. Okay, so it probably explains why Ms. Rivera constantly asks us to reflect on this or that. That's because that's my training. That's how I'm trained as a psychologist, to help you reflect and learn from yourself. Okay, so according to this school of thought, our behavior is because of our environment. And the environment we choose to be in helps to shape our personality or our behavior. Your personality helps to shape how you interpret or react to things. Your personality creates then situations that we react to. And you can see this long little line that's pointing downward. And what that does is it creates a you depending on the situation. So, for instance, people may be honest in one situation and dishonest in another, or people may be very shy in one situation and completely extroverted and outgoing in another. As I've told you guys before, you would probably not recognize me as a person if you saw me at a party with adults. I am not the same person that I am in the classroom because I feel much more comfortable around you all than I do adults, than I do people my own age. And so my personality kind of changes based on my situation. That's the social cognitive school of thought, is that environmentally, we can be different people or in different situations based on what we're around. So, this leads us to a few things in here that I want to talk about within these notes. I will, just before we leave this, because I'm going to show you a PowerPoint, the criticisms about this school of thought is that it explains so much, it explains nothing at all. People don't love this school of thought because it has some circular reasoning to it, and it does ignore personal inner traits. Okay, like I don't use the Keirsey much at all because I believe that, according to my training, that Keirsey letters is going to change over time or from different situation to different situation. And so that's the biggest criticisms of the social cognitive school of thought. And when I say that, it receives criticisms from people who may be more humanistic in their perspective, may be more trait theorist, may be more psychoanalytic. Okay, so this is actually a rather founded perspective. It's growing. This perspective has a lot of psychologists in the current day that are building off theories, like my favorite theorist, and that is Philip Zimbardo and Carol Dweck. But that is kind of the criticism, is it explains so much, explains nothing. Okay. So let's go ahead and come in here. If you've ever taken performance psychology with me, then you've heard about self-efficacy. The whole class is about self-efficacy. And this was Albert Bandura. We've talked about Bandura before with his Bobo doll. And the idea of self-efficacy is the belief that your behavior will lead to expected or desired outcomes, that you believe you have the ability to do something, and that's going to produce an outcome. Just so you know, this is the theory that my dissertation is based off of. It's my belief that if you believe in yourself by using something that I'll talk about here in a second, self-talk, that you're going to increase your self-efficacy and your performance in whatever that may be. In the case of my dissertation, basketball, is going to be better. So self-efficacy is really a central idea when it comes to performance psychology. So if you ever take performance psychology, or if you have taken performance psychology, that is a key buzzword. It is the word that we work around in that class. All right. The other thing is locus of control. Um, Locus of control is, what do you believe? Do you believe you personally have control over matters? Or do you believe in outside influences of control? So if you believe in outside influence of control, we call that an external locus of control. That chance, luck, fate, a higher power, that is what is controlling your life. Well, then you have a lower personal control level. And really, what the social cognitive theorists say is that that's okay to have a little bit of that, but you really want internal locus of control to an extent, believing that you can control your own destiny, okay, and that you have that power to do so. So, those are two really important buzzwords to the social cognitive school of thought. All right, so let's go ahead, and I'm going to present some other ideas to you. This is only about a 8 slides PowerPoint, and this is called Optimism, a Mindset to Healthy Life. The social cognitive theorists believe in growth mindset. They believe in optimism. They believe that the more you feel like you can control your emotions, your reactions, the more you're going to be in control in life, and that's going to increase your self-efficacy. All right. So let's talk about the opposite of that, the victim. This is people who display self-defeating behaviors. They blame others for their misfortune. They feel victimized by bad luck or life circumstances. All right. You can see my examples here. This is somebody definitely playing the victim. Today I got mugged at Disney World, the happiest place on earth, FML. Well, too bad Disney World's not even open right now, so you can't play the victim. So these are examples of somebody playing the victim. Sorry for the typos here. I've noticed that I have some. I think this is an older version of my PowerPoint. All right, learned helplessness. This is a crazy, crazy concept that the father, really, of the social cognitive theory, Martin Seligman, and another scientist by the name of Mayer, basically what they found was that we learn to play the victim. We learn to be helpless and passive and resign. So for instance, let's take, for example, that person that's always in class that says, well, I can't do this math because I'm just not good at math. Okay, first of all, we call that a fixed mindset. Second of all, they've learned to be helpless. Okay, so here's what the Seligman study was. You're probably wondering, what does a dog have to do with this? All right, so what they did is they took 3 groups of dogs and they made this little platform. So this is a steel platform that's actually a switch can be turned on, and that steel platform will electrocute a dog. Okay, so they made this steel platform. And what they did was they put in a group of dogs into this little platform, one at a time, of course, but a group that contributed to the sample. And they put them in here, and group A was the control group. They kind of just checked out, what did the dogs do? And so the dogs just kind of roamed around. They did nothing, They didn't turn on the electricity at all. They're the control group. We're just making sure that dogs in a box with a great floor will just act like a dog. Okay, so we're just making sure that's baseline behavior. Then they took group B. Okay, and what they did with group B was they put the dogs in here, and after a couple minutes, after the dog got used to being in the box, they would show this light, and the light would mean that the grate floor would become electric. And what this would do was it would electrocute the dog. Not like a lethal electric, but an uncomfortable electric shock to the dog. And the dog, there was no way the dog could escape it. The dog couldn't leave. Okay. So he would just get shocked. And of course, the dog would see the little light come on and start to anticipate, just like our rat did, anticipate he was going to get electrocuted, and he'd, kind of quarrel and get electrocuted and be like, oh, that sucked. Okay. So then what they did, so these were our two groups, the experimental group and the control group. Then what they did was the second part of the experiment is they put into the crate a 2x4, just like this one, to separate the crate here, okay? And this side would not have electricity, and this side would have electricity. So they took group A, the control dogs, okay? And they put the control dogs on this side, the electric side. And so they put the dogs in there. They didn't turn on the switch, and the dogs were just kind of chilling. They're like, all right, I got to sit in this dang cage again. And all of a sudden, they would turn on the little light for this side to become electric, and the dog would get shocked. And the dog would be like, ow, what the heck? So he'd get up and he'd go to the other side. And because the other side wasn't being electrified, he'd sit over there. He'd be like, okay, well, I learned that I don't like that side. Okay. Then group B, on the other hand, they put those dogs in there. Remember, one at a time. And when I say dogs, we're talking about like 20 something dogs, because they got to make sure that the behavior is consistent, that it shows a reliable behavior. So they put the dog in here. Dog's sitting there and just kind of looking around, probably a little scared because he got zapped the last time he was in there. So he's sitting there. The light comes on, and the dog just sits there and goes, I'm going to get zapped. That's it. He doesn't even bother to get up like the control dogs and go over to the other side to not get electrocuted. Like, he doesn't even know that this side doesn't get electrocuted because he's just learned, I can't stop this. I have no control over this situation. So he just stays there. And they turn off the electricity, and the dog's sitting there like, that sucked. And then they turn it back on, and the dog's like, I'm just going to take it. This sucks. He doesn't try. So he learns to be helpless. Humans do the same thing. We learn to be helpless. If as a child, we don't get math, and even though the next year we may have a great new math teacher, we may shut math off completely in a fixed mindset and just sit there and take it and just be like, I suck at math. That's all there is. I'm not even going to try. I suck. And not go over to the other side. And we learn this. And the only way to unlearn this is to develop a new mindset known as a growth mindset. Okay, and again, that's what performance psychology is about, is teaching you about this growth mindset. Okay, so it's a really interesting study. Seligman comes upon this. Carol Dweck builds upon it, talking about fixed and growth mindset. And voila, we have current modern day psychology that many psychologists are now espousing. Not necessarily that they're leaving behind the other school of thoughts, but this is the newest kick in psychology. Okay. So some advice. Don't just focus on the bad. Understand that there's good. You know, it goes back to the old analogy of the glass, is it half empty or half full? Okay. And of course, there's always the other things like, well, then I drink it and then it's, it's empty. Okay. Yeah. But it goes back to this analogy, fixed mindset, growth mindset. Okay. Some other advice, don't walk around with blinders. View and see opportunity where you can. If you're just so focused always on doing one thing, you may miss opportunities because you're walking around with those blinders. Okay. I know many of you are great at getting focused on goals, and that's great. But at the same time, remember, there's other really cool things going on around you as you're trying to reach your goal. In performance psychology, we talk about the process, how you need to enjoy the process to the destination. Because once you get to the destination, if you didn't enjoy the process, the destination really isn't that cool. The process, the journey, getting there, that's the really cool part. Nobody makes Disney movies about the team that had the perfect journey to the goal. Nobody wants to see that story. That's boring. You want to see the process, the ups, the downs, the learning experience, and that makes the journey worth it and the destination worth it. And lastly, some advice. If you're not going to take performance psychology, we spend a whole unit on this. Accept failure, learn from it. Failure is not an F word. It is not a bad word. Failure is the only way we learn. I'm just going to say that about that because that's performance psychology is in a nutshell. If you can learn to learn from your failures and not see them as defining of you, you will grow as a person. So back to the strategy that we talk about in performance psychology, positive self-talk. The more that you can talk to yourself in good ways and stop talking to yourself in bad ways, the more you're going to build that self-efficacy. The more you're going to believe you have control, that external locus of control. Positive self-talk is not easy. You talk to yourself so poorly. I can guarantee that you likely don't speak to yourself very kindly. As you walk down the hallway or down maybe the aisle at City Market and you see the person that you have a crush on or whatever that may be, and first thing you're saying is, don't trip, don't be a dumbass, okay? You do those things simply because that's how we talk to ourselves. We talk to ourselves in negatives. Don't. That's a negative. Instead, if I talk to myself of, hold yourself high, you are a good person, people like you, then we're talking to ourselves in positives. And it's really hard to do. It took me probably 8 to 10 years to learn how to talk to myself in a positive manner. And still, to this day, I'll catch myself talking in a negative manner. So aside from the fact that it takes practice, you have to be aware of your mindset, your metacognition needs to happen. Studies of people with pessimistic attitudes are not as healthy as those with optimistic outlooks. It does not hurt you to have an optimistic outlook, okay? It actually helps you more so than the other option. A depressed and hopelessness type of attitude dampens the body's immune system, whereas an optimistic attitude increases the body's immune system, increases the body's mental psyche, and hence why the social cognitive school of thought, it doesn't hurt you to do these things, okay? And so why not do them? All right. So that's the end of my lecture. And I know that I have the wrong PowerPoint up here. The other one doesn't have typos, simply because I don't have my ending usually. I usually have my mind over matter ending. Let's jump back into the social cognitive folder here for Wednesday. And if you check this out, your assignment, sorry, I'm going a little slow because my internet's slow. I feel like sometimes my mind goes as fast as my internet. You have here a lecture discussion. Using 150 words minimum, discuss a point made in the lecture that made you ponder personality or human behavior from the social cognitive point of view. All right. All right, guys, I think that's it. I know that was a little bit longer than normal. But yeah, so I am going to leave you with the rest of the Rise Against song, and we'll be talking again soon. Bye. If you get a chance, listen to the song. I don't even want to end this video because I don't want to end the song. Let's pack our bags and settle where trees grow. I've got some friends, some that I hardly know.